My name is Nancy. I'm a retired nurse of some 42 years. And I was 19 years old when I surrendered my daughter in Akron, Ohio at a Florence Crittenden home for unwed mothers. My father owned his own business. He was heating and air conditioning, and my mother was a homemaker until I got into high school when she went to work at a dress shop. So got a lot of nice clothes when I was in high school, which was a big thing. Favorite childhood memories. I had a wonderful childhood. I was a happy girl, a second child. Had an older sister, and we rode bikes and played dolls and all the things you do in the 50s in middle class America. Had a younger sister come along 12 years after I was born, so I was graduating from high school and she was starting first grade. So just good memories, happy memories of growing up. We went to church every Sunday, and Wednesday nights we were involved in things that the girls did at church and sang in the choir, and I was blessed to be able to sing solos in the church before the services, and I definitely was introduced to that through my childhood. I was very much of a tomboy growing up. I loved, just playing outside, riding my bike, and even though I had a lot of things in high school that I was a cheerleader and I was among the popular crowd, but I was very much athletic in school, and that was my focus. And boys weren't really in the picture till I was 16. And then, and I dated, but it wasn't until after I graduated from high school and I was going to a local college that I met somebody that I just fell head over heels in love with. Of course, I had already fallen in love with this person before I realized that he was married. And then I was crushed because I was not brought up that way, that I would ever have become involved with somebody who was married. And then, of course, I became pregnant, and with him being married, there was not a question of, well, what are we going to do? My emotions, what I felt when I found out I was pregnant, I was very happy. I mean, because I loved this man. This man, truly, as I look back in my life, over my life now, truly was the love of my life. And I am not happy to say that he was a married man, and that should not have been. It was very hard once I knew that to stop love. I mean, how do you turn off your love for somebody? I know he loved me too. I was already very far along in my pregnancy before I told my parents. The moment that I told them what was going on, they were devastated. My parents decided that I would have to be put away somewhere. Everything was very secret. You didn't dare want to let anybody know that this happened to your daughter, and the story was made up. If anybody asked, where is she? And so they had chose the Florence Crittenden home in Akron, Ohio, which is about 2 hours from my home. So the chances of anybody seeing me there or knowing me there were very, very slim. So there was never any discussion that I would keep the baby. Never, never. And so in my 7th month, then I went to the home. When you went into the home, you could, I guess you could keep your name, but I was told that I could choose a name where nobody, just in case. I went by Lisa Fredericks. That was my name. Florence Crittenden, I think, is run by the Catholic Charities. So it's very much akin to the Catholic, and the nuns and the Catholic Church. In the Florence Crittenden homes, they had a house mother, and she would be the lady who was there all the time. I imagine now that I look back, they probably had somebody who's there overnight with us. That she was just kind of like a mother of all of us girls. And she would make sure that we, did our chores. Everybody had responsibilities, whether it was clearing the table, working in the kitchen, doing the laundry. We could only go out and never past dark. And most of us wore rings on our fingers because, if we were several of us and we were all pregnant, I know everybody knew, like, oh, we know where those girls are from. And we could always walk around the property anytime. And you weren't allowed to have any visitors, only from home, your parents or your siblings, but no boyfriends. They didn't like that. And your phone calls, I think, as I recall, it was like a pay phone or something. And girls were always waiting to get on the phone to talk to probably their boyfriends and whatnot. And I do remember a social worker, I think, coming in to talk to me. But it was always, I was made to feel like, from the get-go, that my baby was going to be adopted, and that they never referred to it as your baby. It was a baby or the baby, or but never personalized to my baby. Not a thing about government aid or welfare or food stamps or all the things that I know of now that had to have been available to someone such as me back in the 70s, because she was born in 1970. Not a word to try to help me make a good decision with the facts. No. Getting to know the other girls in that home, we were all pretty much the same. A lot of us, came from good middle-class families with good parents, and we had just gotten perhaps in with the wrong man or the wrong boy, or maybe not a wrong person, but doing something that at the time was not acceptable, and that is having sex outside of marriage. The only person I really had to confide in and become close to was another girl at the home. And we just connected immediately and became very close friends. And I even saw her for a little while after we both left. She delivered her baby about a month before I did. And after she left, it was the most difficult time because I didn't really feel that close to any of the other girls. I was still visited by this person. Occasionally he was able to come up, but they did not like that you were not to have any contact with anybody but your family, your parents. And so it was a very hard time because I loved this person with all my heart. And to have his child meant everything to me. And yet, that was not the plan for me to keep the child. And so the remaining time of my pregnancy, I guess I just never wanted her to be born, because I thought as long as she's inside me, she was mine. And the moment she was born, that she would not, because I knew that was everybody's plan. And I didn't know any different. What could I do? What could I do? At 19, I didn't have a job, and how could I care for her? And no options were ever offered. It was expected that I would sign on the dotted line. And I saw many girls in those 2 months that I spent at the Florence Crittenden home come back from the hospital and leave without their babies. And I knew that was my path. And I did not like it at all. But there was nothing I could do. And it's hard even today to relive those memories. All these years later, 48 years later. I do know that having worked in labor and delivery and in obstetrics in my nursing career, I know now what transpires, with birth. And but back then, being 19 and not knowing a thing about what was going to happen, and I don't remember any classes preparing me for that. It was, other than some of the girls at the home when they would go into labor, and some of them were in a lot of pain and you could hear them from your room. You thought, oh boy, what's happening there? That's frightening. Is that going to happen to me? I don't have very many memories of the actual birth, so I don't know if I was drugged or medicated. 19 and going through childbirth. I'm sure I had to be in pain, but not knowing what to ever expect, because I didn't know anything about that.
After you gave birth, were you able to hold your baby?
That is one of the biggest regrets of my life. I remember a nurse coming to my room with my baby. And I told her, I'm not supposed to hold my baby because she's being adopted. And the nurse immediately turned around. I think she didn't know that. And she said, oh, I'm so sorry. And she ran out of the room. And I wished I'd have taken her and held her and counted her fingers and toes and looked at her sweet face. But I was being a good girl, because I was told I wasn't allowed to see or touch my baby. And so I told them, I'm not allowed to hold my baby. You don't need to touch your baby or see your baby or hold your baby, because they're going to be adopted, so it's better for you if you just don't have any contact. I remember the day that I was supposed to sign the papers in the office. My mother, myself, and the house mother, and there might have been another man in there. I don't know if he was an attorney or somebody of that nature. And I have vivid memories of not wanting to do that and crying and saying, I won't sign, I'm not doing that. I can't do that. They're not taking my baby. It was always, you know, what's best for the child. And you know you can't take care of this child. You don't have a job, you know, nothing, you know. You can't, how can you provide? But there's somebody out there who can't have any children. And so, won't you do this good thing for them? You'll move on and you'll be able to go back to school and get an education and, you know, live your life and it'll be all right and you'll forget. And what? What? You know, how do you ever forget? Never, never. And I walked around that room and I did not want to sign, and I drug on for a long time. But I felt like that we would be in that room forever until I signed that paper. You know, I was forced to sign on the line. And that was the worst day of my life. After the birth of my daughter, I left. That happened in December. I was at a university in my hometown and I transferred to one out of state where I went to school then right after the winter break and started in January, and it was like I was just expected to pick up my life at a university campus like nothing ever happened, and I was not the same person anymore. I'd had a child. I was a mother without a child. So it was a difficult time going to school after that happened. I made my grades fair enough, I guess. I don't even remember too much, but I remember being in the dorm and I remember all the girls and my suite mates, and I thought, I don't belong here, I don't fit here. This isn't my life. It was hard. I didn't date anybody for a long time. And then I did talk to when we were dating and it got serious enough, you know, I shared, he was divorced and had a child from that previous marriage. And so we would have his son, was it every other weekend? And I often thought to myself, here I am being a stepmother to his child when I should have my child. I thought that was very ironic. So, yeah, I shared. That was something I thought was important for somebody to know before they would want to marry me. And it was 5 years that I had my next child. I was married for 2 years and then had my child, so it was 5 years from the time she was born till I had another child. My second pregnancy, of course, it was very reminiscent. I would always think about my daughter, my first child, but I was excited and anticipated this child very much, but she was never out of my mind. Always that missing hole there. As it turned out, I was only married for 5 years, the first to my husband, and then we divorced, and then 13 years to my second husband, and then we split, but then he passed away. Triggers all the time, every day. You know, things you see, hear with your ears, read. I know there wasn't a day that went by, especially initially, that I didn't think about her. I mean, the birthday was the big day that you thought about her. And then even when I got married and had my 2 sons, I would always think about her. Well, this is what, you know, she probably did at this age, and, you know. And I had really felt it very important for me to tell my children about this. I think my oldest was when he was maybe in the 10th grade, and his brother was in the 8th grade, because they are 2 years apart. So I had planned a special trip up to the mountains and a weekend for us to be together. And they were very understanding, my sons were. And you know, you wonder what they comprehended at those ages, and as they've gotten older, I think they understand maybe even more now that they have families of their own children. But they were understanding of that. I don't think they treated me any differently or loved me any less or whatever. Processing one's grief after such a loss. I really only had the Lord to talk to. I've never had any counseling or never gone to any therapy, and I have kept, with the exception through the years, well, my youngest sister and maybe 2 friends that I have ever shared this part of my life with. Otherwise, it's been kept locked up down deep inside of me, because, I mean, why send somebody away and keep this a secret if you're going to talk to everybody about it? And but my mother, she just never, I guess she bought into the, well, you'll forget and you'll move on and it's done and over with, and that's the way it is. And it's better just not to bring it up. I was just kind of shuffled along by the adults in my life as to how we handle this situation, and never anything on grief. I mean, what a loss. I mean, it's a loss that when you lose somebody by death, you grieve and you bury them, and everyone around you supports you in one way or another. And with this grief, nobody ever dies. Life is going on in measures, you know, with my daughter, myself, my grandchildren. You know, I've heard it said that maybe as much as the men and women who come back from our wars and what they have seen and endured in wartime, and come back with the diagnosis of PTSD, I believe that we women who have been through the loss of our children, we would have PTSD, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And should have been offered a lot of things down through the years as therapy and help, and lots of things that we have not. I've done some reading about arrested development, and sometimes I think I stopped being me at 19. You know, I know that in many ways I feel like I've never known who I was really supposed to be because of what happened to me. I don't know who I would have turned out to be had I not gone through this great trauma in my life. Maybe I'd not been as sensitive, or I don't know. There is only one time, probably 5 years ago, that I would say, when my mother was a little better and she was visiting me in North Carolina. And she walked into my living room. I can see it like it was just yesterday. And she said, "I want to talk to you about your daughter." And I snapped back pretty quickly, and I said, "Mom, there won't be any discussion about my daughter." And that was the end of it, and she never said another word. Because I'd felt that after all this time, what did she want to know now? You know, it had been 40 years or whatever it was at that point. So it's never been talked about since 1970. Not one word. So it's a heartache I've endured alone by myself. No. And for a long time, many years, I carried in my wallet an article that I had cut out of a Dear Abby. Not too long ago, I had come to the realization of how many lies I was told. And I thought that they were truths. So a long time in my life, I didn't realize how many people had lied to me and the things that they had said. And in this little Dear Abby article, it said, you know, you have filled somebody's arms with a baby because they couldn't have any. And I thought, well, that was a good thing. But now my arms are empty. And I don't have my baby. My baby. So I thought, that's not right. Something's not right there. That's not the truth. And I just felt like I was very angry when I came to that realization. I've always known that I would find her. I would search for her from the day I had to sign on that paper. And I've always had my eyes and ears open to how I could know that she was okay, that she isn't in some terrible situation and needs rescued. Many years ago, there was a reunion avenue, I guess one could search from. It was called Soundex. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It was, oh goodness, at the time, I think it was like $300, and you could purchase this big 3-ring binder. I don't know what to call it quite, but it taught you how you could search for your child. And so I saved and invested in that and got one of those Soundex registry things. And anyways, I wrote a letter to the home, and I said, please place this in her files, that should she ever be searching for me, that I would welcome her contacting me. And many years went by and I never heard a thing, and I was always looking and always on the edge of, you know, checking, and nothing ever came about with that. And then when I finally had I tried several avenues and not been successful, and this was of course all before the internet age, back in the day. Oh, when was it? 16 years ago, maybe a little longer than that. I had heard of a retired police officer who did these things, helped search for children that you'd given up for adoption. So I contacted him, And he said he would do that for me. And as I recall, I don't even think he charged me anything, because he was in Ohio and I was in North Carolina. And it wasn't but, I don't know, a couple of days, and he was on the phone with me and told me, you know, if you're not sitting down, please sit down, because I have your information, just that quick. And here she was living just 30 minutes from me in where I'm living now. And I thought, oh my goodness, could it be possible? Because I thought if I would ever want to see her, I'd probably have to go back to Akron. And so it took me a little while to process, you know, how would I contact her. And I did so through a phone call. And I am sure that she probably was speechless, as she was, for there was some silence on the phone, probably to comprehend what had just been said to her. And that was our initial contact on the phone. And she did return the call within a few days after she said she'd need some time to process all of this. And she did call me back, but she was not ready to do anything with that yet. She had just a 6-month-old baby and a 3 and a 5-year-old. So, and if you don't think genetics is a strong thing, she is also a labor and delivery nurse. We graduated from the same university, so she's in nursing, and you know, the same love of women's health. And yeah, it's really interesting when you look at things sometimes how it's very similar and close. And she had 2 sons and a daughter, and her mother, had 2 sons and a daughter. So it's just amazing sometimes when you start to look at certain things, genetics and lives. I've come a long way from the timid 19-year-old that I was, and I have one of the friends that I've confided in through the years has told me I've become quite a bold person. She says, I don't know how you did what you just told me you did, because I could never have done that. But I think unless you walk the walk in the shoes that we mothers who have surrendered our children, you don't know what you would do. But yes, from the time that I made the phone conversation with her and told her, introduced myself, she would not consent to meeting me even for a cup of coffee. And I I struggled a lot with that, because you know, it wasn't like I wanted to come in and take over and finally be her mother. But I wanted to know her and to have some kind of whatever she'd let me in to have with her. And so one day, because I had her address, I decided I was going to go to her house and knock on her door and see her. And so I did that, and I was very nervous and very scared as I walked up to her front door. And she came to the door, and I told her who I was, and she stepped out on her porch, and we had a little conversation. I tried to think about what she would be thinking in her mind that she would like to know, that maybe she'd had questions about. I know all adopted children have thoughts about their original mothers, and you know, what does she look like, and you know, what does she do in her life, what kind of person is she, and what about my father. all of those things. So I just tried to, let her know that I loved her from the moment I knew that I was carrying her. And her father was special, and I loved him too. And she was very much wanted, but nobody could find a way for me to keep her. But I never wanted to give her up. It wasn't my choice to give her away. I wanted her to know that. And I've thought about her every day for all of her life. And about that time, her little one, I think it was her older one, which I guess to be about 5, that time came out on the porch and said something to her. And I looked and I said, oh, my grandson. And so she told him to do something, and he went back in the house. And I knew I had to leave because she was tense. And I said, well, I'm going to go. But I said, before I go, can I please give you a hug? Because all those years came back when I told that nurse that I couldn't couldn't hold my baby. I just wanted to touch her. And I just wanted to hold her. And she kindly said yes. And so I was able to give her a hug. That was the only time then that I saw her, and it's been 16 years now. When I decided to search for my daughter, I shared it with her father. He reacted positively. He was okay with that because we'd been in contact through the years. When I told my parents about searching for my daughter, they weren't in opposition to it. It was pretty much my decision, and whatever I was doing was okay with them. Because by about this time it was society's views about all of that had definitely changed. We just never talked much about it. They never brought it up, and after a while I just figured, well, I'm just going to keep this to myself. Because if you're really interested and you want to know, you ask from time to time, how are things? Do you hear from? And I have a friend that does that. She'll text me every once in a while and say, have you heard anything from? And I'll say, yeah or no. And I don't know, it's hard to look into your parents' heart and know, did you miss your grandchild? That was your grandchild. And I don't know if they looked at it that way or not. I think it was just a difficult period in their life, and they were relieved that, their pregnant daughter, all that's done. It's over, and the child has a good home, and we're back to normal life, and we can go on. And maybe too, they didn't want to bring it up to me because they knew how sad it would make me. I am extremely offended by birth mother. I do not like birth mother or any other term you want to use, or mother of origin, or whatever. I'm the mother. I'm the mother of that child. That's the thing that offends me the most about all the terms. And especially when things are shown in a light that is wrong. That really bothers me. And I feel like sometimes I have no voice. And I feel like doing this documentary with you has given me a little voice where I have been silent for a long time and internalized all my grief and pain. unless there is nobody in the family of origin that would be willing to take the child, I just can't say I am pro-adoption in any form. There are always extenuating circumstances, and there are always exceptions that have to be examined. And adoption for older children, I think, you know, there are so many that have no families, and I think it's wonderful, you know, if somebody would want to adopt. But an infant, I have a real hard time there, because I think everything in one's power to keep that in family of origin is real important, real important. To this day, because it was a Catholic-run facility, and I did see nuns from time to time, I'm not Catholic, but I have a very hard time. We have in my hometown an abbey that is a college. They have a college there, and they also have they have nuns. They have, I don't know what you call all the people, the proper terms, but they do have a facility where they have students on the campus that have gotten pregnant, and they don't have to be going to school there, but they are allowed to come and live in this facility that they have for the time while they're carrying their child, and then afterward. And people donate baby clothes and baby items, and I have always wanted to give back in this capacity to unwed mothers, but I have a hard time today still to get past the nuns and the Catholic, because of, and I know not all of the sisters are the same and all of that, but that was the influence. That was an influence in my young life, and I just have a hard time there. But as far as retribution goes, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they can do. I mean, an apology seems so minuscule to the enormity of what took place for all of us girls from 1945 to 1972. It's very painful that my daughter doesn't want to have a relationship with me, not even so basic as having a cup of coffee together. But I don't know all the things behind the scenes as to why. And I do know that she has told me that her father, whom she must be very close to, her adoptive father, knew of my contact with her. Evidently she told him. And I would have been elated if he'd have said to her, well, now you just tell her to come on over to our house and we can all sit down and meet one another. You know, I'm thankful that they gave her a good life. And I would have told them so. But he didn't. He didn't say that to her. I gave you the greatest gift that anybody can give another human being, and I did that not willingly, but I did it. And could you not spare me a little time with her, because I don't have as much time left as you have had with her. So I just thought, but my kids often tell me, Mom, in a real world, that would be just fine. But we don't live in the real world. Or we live in the real world, not in your idyllic world. Maybe I held on to my sons a little tighter because of what I'd been through. I miss having my daughter, who would be maybe a little closer to me because she's a woman. And I've lost that. And I've lost my grandchildren. And I have a granddaughter who's, I think she's 16 now. And I don't know her, and she doesn't know me. And the loss just keeps going on, you know. Special moments in life, graduation, you know, birthdays, those things I'm missing. I miss them all with my daughter, and now I'm missing them with my grandchildren. I think that mothers of loss who have not reunited with their children are like an open wound that never heals and won't heal until the two can reunite and reconnect in some fashion. And I have told my own daughter that I don't feel like there can be healing for either one of us. She is the key to mine, and I am the key to hers. And if that never comes about, that wound just never heals. It stays open, and then it's vulnerable to all kinds of infection, and you can't close up the wound. And I feel like I'm a walking wound in that area of my life, but it bleeds over into other areas and affects, you know, if you have an open wound on your skin and it gets infected, it travels all through your body goes through your blood to all your body, and you can end up with septicemia. Septicemia is an infection of the blood, and you can die. You can die from that. And I know that because I had septicemia some time ago, and I almost died. It's been quite a few years ago now, but if I can make that analogy, and so that's my feeling on healing, and I'm not there. I'm not healed, and I won't be until I can have her and I talk, make some progress there. I'm sure there are people who've done a lot better than I have in coping with their loss, and maybe there are some who have done a lot worse. Everybody's different in how they process that, but I do know that we've all lost and grieved, and we've all gone through PTSD, and how we've dealt with it as an individual. I would very much like to have more contact with mothers, because I think we can encourage one another, because we've been walking in the same shoes. And I've never really shared with another mother of loss. And who to better understand and empathize than another mother who's lost too. Mentally and physically, I know it has taken a toll on my life. I did name my baby, and I named her Joy. And I did that because it stood for Jesus, others, yourself. Joy.